Hey everyone, I'm Mike Settele, the founder of Settele Tutoring, and in this video I want to do double duty. I want to do a little bit of follow-up on the May SAT and some predictions about the June SAT. So if you watched my video predicting the May exam, then you probably know that I was talking a lot about geometry. So I'm curious, did you find the May SAT hard? Give me a comment. Did it have a lot of geometry? Did it not have a lot of geometry? A lot of people already commented. Some said I was totally right. Lots of geometry. Others said I was totally wrong. They basically had none. Well, here's the thing. The May SAT, I was kind of talking about geometry, but there was a bigger point to that lesson, to that video, and it was more about kind of what we're going to talk about more in this video. Will the June SAT be hard? Or even a better question, what makes any SAT hard? That's the real piece there. And so in that May prediction video, which I'm linking to up here, I talked a lot about the unpredictability of the test, where even someone like me who's been taking SATs, teaching SATs for 15 years, anytime I take an SAT now, I still only am about like 90% able to predict what's on the test. There are still 10% of questions that I have never seen before, and I've seen thousands of SAT questions. But that's the nature of the exam. So on the June exam, some people will get hard geometry, some people won't, but everyone will get hard questions that you can't predict no matter how many practice tests you've taken, no matter how many hours that you've studied. But that's just on the surface. On the surface, they look new and unusual, but they're really made of the same building blocks that make up the easy questions. And so the problem people have is that as you study, you're trying to memorize the steps to solve every single type of hard question. And then when you get to the real exam, of course, you haven't memorized the steps for those particular hard questions because you've never seen them before. The SAT is very good at giving you those unpredictable questions. So what we need instead are strategies that work in lots of places. So the main point of that May video, speaking of geometry, was that no matter what the shapes were given, there are a few moves that we can make that will work, right? They're not about solving every type of shape and memorizing those steps. It's about doing strategies that are going to help us kind of no matter what we're given. Specifically, I said draw radiuses and make triangles, and odds are very good that if you just do those things without thinking, you're going to start to solve the question. And that's really why people find SATs hard, is that they do not have a good step one strategy. You're trying to memorize all the little steps for all the little questions. That's not good. What we need is a step one strategy that works in a wide variety of questions. And so in a second, I'm going to put a question up here for you to try. It is what I call an XY plane question. So it's not geometry. It is about kind of like functions and how they behave on the XY graph. So you've never seen this before. It is not from a practice test. It is one that I wrote. If you want to follow along and try it yourself, feel free to pause, get some scratch paper, and do it. But regardless, what I want everyone to think about is how long does it take you to start step one? Basically, after you finish reading that question, how long before you are already starting to solve? Not that you have a full plan, because when I finish reading that question, I don't know what my step two or my step three are. But as soon as I finish reading, I know step one. And I've definitely talked about this step one strategy in a lot of my other videos. So if you've been watching my channel, if you've subscribed, you will probably have a good sense of what it's going to be. But I'll reveal that when we go over the question. Because the most important thing to doing well in an SAT and being prepared for those hard questions is to have a strategy that works in lots of different places. It won't work everywhere, but if it can get us step one in a lot of questions, then we're not going to be wasting time staring at a question, waiting for some light bulb to go off, some big idea to happen in our minds. We need to get to work right away, and then we can deal with the weirdness, but we need that step one strategy. So pay attention to that as you take a look at this question. Well, if you needed a hint, here it is. My main math strategy, you've probably heard me say it if you've watched any of my lessons on math, plug points into equations. If you have no idea what I'm talking about, go to my channel. There's a free strategy series. I'm actually linking to it in this description. I think it's episode 5. The thumbnail says plug points into equations. Watch it. It's very important. This is the main step one strategy for most of the math section. So I recognized instantly that I can use this strategy. As soon as I finish reading, I have an equation, f of x equals ax squared plus bx plus c, and I have points. F of k equals f of 2k. Now they're messy points. It's a messy equation, but my robotic brain doesn't care. I need to start this hard question in some way, and as soon as I finish reading, I've got step one covered. I have no idea where I'm going to end up with this question, but as long as I've got step one, I'm going to start putting things on the page, and I can trust that this strategy is going to work out because, from experience, I know it generally does. So how would we plug the points in? Let's take a look. Well, the k is going to go in for x, right? So we can just literally plug that in and kind of just rewrite this equation to start. K squared plus bk plus c. Now the value of f of k is equal to, so we can put an equal sign, the same thing if we plugged in 2k, right? So we can do that, and just remember when we put 2k in, it's going to get squared, right? So that's going to mean we have 4ak squared, right? So the 2 becomes a 4, the k becomes k squared, and then I'm just putting the 4 out front because that's how you write algebra. If we put it in for the x in the bx, right, we're going to get 2bk and then plus c. Now you might be thinking, well, what good did that do? And I would have even a messier equation. Yeah, but we also have some really good algebra instincts, hopefully, and we know that, hey, if nothing else, just combine like terms and see where you end up, right? So we can subtract the c's, that's nice because they cancel out, so that's one less thing to worry about. Then because it's kind of got some squareds, we probably think, well, let's get it equal to 0, right? That's generally a good thing to do, so we can subtract out. We get 0 is equal to 3ak squared plus bk. And again, this is hard algebra, but it's still pretty basic in the grand scheme of things in the SAT. We know to factor, so we can factor out a k. That leaves us with 3ak plus b. And then if we factored and got things equal to 0, the whole point is then we have many equations we can solve, right? So one of them is just that k is equal to 0. But we also know that k is a non-zero constant, so this is just a wash, right? Ignore it, doesn't matter. But for the other piece, 3ak equals b, right? We can solve that, so 3ak, or 3ak plus b equals 0, so subtract the b's. We're going to get negative b equals 3ak, divide by 3a, divide by 3a, and I'm just going to put it over here so it's separated out. We get k is equal to negative b over 3a. So look, is that an answer? No, we need k to be a number, obviously. We can't, put that in. But it's certainly a pretty simple thing, and now we've got some stuff we can do. This all was very robotic, right? I did not pause and worry here at all. I just dove right into it. Now, this might not be the most efficient way to solve this question, but it certainly was fast in the sense that I just got going with it. I didn't worry about where it was going to take me yet. You need to be able to trust the strategies in order to use them effectively. So the next part of this is, kind of hard, but I do think it's more likely that we can use it if we see that we've gotten to this point. We need to recognize what this means. The sum of the zeros of f is 18. So remember, the strategy is plug points into equations. So to start, we had a point, we had an equation, all was well. But sometimes we don't have both of those things. And we can approach a question by either making up a point or providing an equation that we've memorized. And that's the way I'm going to go for now. I'm also going to try the other way, but let's do this way now because I think that's how most of you are going to try to think about it. There is an equation for the sum of what we normally say are the solutions for a quadratic equation. So solutions and zeros is the same thing. So the sum of the solutions is going to be negative b over a. And you can kind of tell that doesn't look that different from the equation we just found for k. So maybe that's going to help us because we have more to plug into this equation, right? Plug points into equations. We actually now know that 18 is equal to negative b over a. And again, some of you are already making connections between these two equations, but the thing we can do if we're a little bit confused is isolate one of the variables. So if we multiplied both sides by a, we'd have 18a equals negative b. And look, there's a negative b on the top of this, so we can substitute. We could get b alone if we really want to, but I'm not going to bother here. We can just substitute in. And so we're going to get k is equal to 18a over 3a. And look, things just work out sometimes, guys. Look, the a's are going to cancel. 18 divided by 3 is 6, and that is the answer. Did I know that I was going to end this whole process with that kind of move? No, I don't care about that. When I start a question, especially a hard question, I am not interested in how I'm going to finish it. I just want to get started because as soon as I start writing things on the page, more ideas are going to come. There's less stuff that I'm holding in my head when I write it down that I can now have new ideas pop up. I can make connections that I wouldn't have made if I was just thinking about it. And this is why it's so bad on hard questions for you to just stare and stare and stare and think about, oh, what do I do? You need a step one strategy. Just get started. And a lot of times too, people do have good ideas in those about step one, but you're so afraid of whether or not that step one is going going to work that you don't bother trying it. And that's not good either. Get it on the page and get to work. And I think you will surprise yourself how often it just works out. Now, obviously, if we didn't know this formula sum of the solutions, we would be in some trouble here. But again, thinking about my main strategy for math, plug points into equations, I'm constantly asking myself the same two things for every math question that I encounter. Do I have points? Do I have equations? To start out, I had both. But then you might hit that roadblock right here where k is equal to negative b over 3a. Okay, so, all right, well, what do we do if we get to this point? And let's start backwards, negative b over 3a, and we get stuck. Well, we have an equation, right? We have k equals negative b over 3a. It sure would be nice if we had points to plug in for b and a, because if we did, then we can solve for k. So where do we get those points? Well, sometimes we make them up. And this is, again, another advantage of thinking about plug points into equations. It just kind of forces you to try stuff. What if we made them up? As long as we have the sum of the zeros being 18, we can do whatever we want. So remember, the zeros, those are the x-intercepts. So what if I had a really simple quadratic? Y equals x minus 9 times x minus 9, right? Because what are those factors? Those factors tell us that we have x-intercepts at x equals 9 and, well, x equals 9. That's the same solution, that's the same zero, but it's still, two zeros that added together give us a sum of 18. It's the simplest thing. Maybe it won't work, but you know what? It doesn't hurt to try. Now, we wrote this in factored form, but remember they gave us the a, b, and c in the standard form. So why don't we get back to that? Why don't we FOIL this out? Y, or f of x, is equal to x squared minus 18x plus 81. Well, now if we compare that to the a and b in the generic formula, we have that a is equal to 1 and b is equal to negative 18. Let's plug those in, plug points into equations, and see what happens, right? K is equal to negative 18 over 3 times 1. Well, that's k is equal to 18 over 3, which is 6. It doesn't matter what you do. There's going to be, for these hard questions, probably multiple paths to the solution. So just doing something, even if you're not sure if it's going to work, odds are good it'll move the question along. It'll reveal whatever is supposed to happen next. And you might have multiple choices that you can kind of work with, or multiple paths, I should say, that you can work with to get to that right answer. So this is two ways to solve this question, both of which involve plug points into equation. There is a third way that I know of involving the vertex. I'm not going to say any more. If you feel like you figured it out, feel free to leave a comment. I'm curious if anyone knows what you could do here. I do think the vertex version might be slightly more efficient if you can notice it right away. But I think, again, the main problem people have is that they spend so long trying to think about what the most efficient way to solve it is that they waste any time they would have saved being efficient, right? So it's not a shortcut if you take a minute and a half to get to it. Just do something. The better thing is just to get started. If you catch yourself staring at a question, that's a bad sign. Now, not every question is going to involve plug points into equations. So we will have questions where this does not work and where it is truly hard, and having that step one is very hard to come to. So for those questions, yeah, maybe skip them, save them for last. But there are enough of these hard questions where plug points into equations is a valid first step strategy that you should at least be able to move through these faster and save more time for those truly incredible ones where it is very difficult to get to step one. So that's all that this really comes down to, is even on the easy ones. Maybe you're taking too long on some of those easy ones because you don't have that first step strategy, and plug points into equations is a really good way of just getting started very quickly with lots of questions. So if nothing else, hopefully I've repeated plug points into equations often enough that you now understand what it really means to make a hard SAT much easier. The reason I think a lot of people keep finding these questions hard in the practice tests is they're trying to memorize the steps that you need to solve every hard question. That's not a good way to go about it. We need big picture strategies that work in lots of places, not individual steps that we memorize for every little topic. That is insane, and it is not going to work because they will always give you things you cannot predict. So if you're looking for more practice, I do have an entire set of questions kind of like this involving complicated quadratics and these weird rules that they give us in my channel membership. So you can just click the join button on this video or any video to do that. For just $4.99 a month, you can have access to all the questions that I have written. Great if you don't want to spoil the practice tests. Great if you've already used all the practice tests. I've got lots of different topics and I'm always adding more. And remember, you can cancel anytime. So if you're done with the June SAT, you can just cancel. I will not be offended, and then you can go about your life without it. So hopefully it is a great way to just get that extra practice, and every single video that I put up for my members has the question just like I showed you. It has a timer so you can actually pace yourself in the question, and then it has me explaining the best ways to solve strategically. Many questions will involve plug points into equations. And of course, I've got reading questions too with the main reading strategy of dumb summaries. So check them out. The playlist is in for this type of question is in there, and I've made one of them publicly available so you can see what it's like. But all of my other resources are on my channel. Please subscribe so you can get those. The rest of them are free. If you're taking any of the practice tests, there's explanations for all of those. Whew. Remember, when it comes to your scores, don't settle for less. Settele for more. I'm Mike Settele. Thanks for watching. Good luck on your June SAT.